Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Wow, Tuesday. Alan Schimmel here for TechStrong Gang. Thanks for joining us. We got a lot to talk about. I want to get right to it. Our gang members today are all familiar faces to you if you've been following us here on the gang. Let me just quickly, we've got Mitch Ashley, JP Morgenthau, and of course, my friend Stephen Foskett. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for being here.
Same to you.
Let's jump right into it. So, back in the .com days, I was part of a team that we did a roll-up became infrastructure, but it was an ASP and hosting play. We did 30 acquisitions in 36 months. Crazy. But those 30 acquisitions probably represented 90 potential acquisitions, 60 of which didn't happen. This is what happens when you do acquisitions, not in mass, but as part of your business. OpenAI has been doing a couple acquisitions over the last few months. But one, which was, I think, a big one for them, Windsurf, seemed to have some great IP and some great people. It seems to have fallen through the cracks. These things happen. But what made it worse, a little salt in the wound, it looks like Google picked them up. JP, what's the story here?
Well, I think there's more to this story than meets the eye. First of all, this whole trend is going, towards what has been termed acquihire. It's raising questionable ethics and practices, bordering on potentially criminal if it's deemed by certain policymakers that they're trying to circumvent the requirements to go for review that a public company needs to undertake before they actually do an acquisition. So instead of actually acquiring the company, they can bypass all that effort by going in through this back door and taking the leaders, the brains out of the company. And basically what happens is they strip the original company, Windsurf, of its intellectual value, and then they make the shareholders whole. So the people who are left with nothing are the employees left behind who are told, here's an empty shell, you get what's left, have fun, good luck. And that's kind of what these acquihire processes are doing to companies. So instead of Google coming in and doing a real acquisition in the way it should with M&A, and what would happen if OpenAI had come in, those employees would have had change of control event, their shares would have vested, they would have made a few bucks maybe. All that's out the window now. But the Google gets the same value proposition without that, without going through all that hassle. So as you can see, from an acquisition standpoint, it's not just that the OpenAI deal fell apart. It's that they actually Google backdoored the whole thing and to take the goods, if so to speak, and run off.
So I got some views on this one. So first of all, I don't know how truly valuable the Windsurf IP is. I don't know enough.
Valuable. Yeah, it
is valuable. Okay.
Yeah, they're one of the leaders in this assisted coding space. They have technology. Obviously, Google's not very. Gemini is not very good compared to like Claude Code. They're not up there as a leader against Anthropic or even X with regard to their coding abilities. And so this was an opportunity to enter back into a leadership position.
Okay. So here's the thing. We're going to sit here and complain that money people are greedy and devious. After all, we're not communists, right? This has been going on. I mean, thinking, I mentioned I was part of a roll-up, helped in the .com. We did all those acquisitions. So many of our deals were structured as strictly asset purchases. We didn't buy the shell of the company, and we didn't buy the liabilities and the nonsense that came on with it. Back in those days, we wanted the whole team, though. We always took the people because we always felt that the people were the most valuable asset that a lot of these companies had. I'm interested here, right? In this one, they did take people. I mean, clearly they took the leadership. But they also did license the IP. Now, if they licensed substantially all the IP of Windsurf, most of the option contracts that I've seen in my years, that would trigger an event, right? That would be if you sell substantially all the assets or the IP, generally that triggers an event. But look, I have
They
friends.
didn't sell it though. They licensed it.
Oh, they just
That's
say, and it's still going to own
just
it. So
license
that's slick.
And then the deal is that the shareholders would get reimbursed or get their money out of that licensing deal.
Sure.
So the part of this is I think we have a repeat of post-World War II where everybody's acquiring all of the rocket scientists. It's just AI scientists or AI talent now of, whether it's Meta or Google or any of them, stealing from Apple, et cetera. The real IP in Windsurf is their what they call SWE1, which is their LLM, which is a multi-step LLM for multi-step for software development that they've invested in, they trained themselves, and that's what's behind it. They don't really talk about it. They talk about it as a Cursor-like tool, similar to what Cursor does, but that's the real power behind it. And yes, they support everybody else's LLM. They don't use SWE for code generation. They use it for agentic steps, workflows, etc. So I think that's, if anything, that's the golden jewel, golden eggs, if you will, that Google's getting a hold of here.
Yeah, but how many deals do we see where PE companies come in and sweep up a company, the leadership team, throws in a couple dollars too, and they have a stake, and employee shares and so forth are basically just squashed?
On the sell side, I don't think there's any issue here with regard to what they've done. I think the issue is because it's a public company on the buy side. And because they are a public company, they are subject to be handling certain parts of acquisition a certain way in order to meet the compliance requirements for acquisition. And they bypassed all that. And therefore,
what is it, JP, what is it that they bypassed that you're
the
concerned
acquisition, I forget which body it is, but the whole process of, I guess, reviewing for monopolistic practices, you have to get sign off.
What's her name who recently left? Is it FTC?
FTC, yeah. So they have to get approval in the various countries, right, to say that this is fair, right, from a market perspective. And this bypasses all that. They don't have to go for that compliance check, and that raises ethical questions in the market.
Yeah, the whole thing is just bizarre because, they $3 billion is nothing to sneeze at. That's some serious money that OpenAI was reportedly going to pay for this company, Windsurf, that has, ostensibly Windsurf has 1 million users, but who the heck knows? This company was formerly called Codium, and they changed the name of the company to Windsurf, which is ungoogleable. It's like the worst or one of the worst name changes ever. Because, of course, if you Google Windsurf, what are you going to get? I guarantee you're not going to get a coding editor. And this acquisition is so bizarre because essentially what's happened is the head of business is going to become the interim CEO at Windsurf. So Windsurf is going to continue, but the founder, the co-founder, the CEO, some of their R&D employees, they're all going over to Google with a license to use the technology. In other words, Windsurf is effective, in my opinion, it seems like Windsurf is dead after this, or at least pining for the fjords, as they say. And Google gets the juice. And Google, as JP's saying, doesn't even have to get permission to acquire what would really be a competitive company, and probably doesn't have to pay the $3 billion that OpenAI had. I'm not sure what Windsurf's investors are getting out of this. Maybe they realized they weren't going to get that $3 billion anyway and are willing to take less. But the whole thing is just so much AI nonsense.
Let me play devil's advocate and conspiracy theorist here a little bit. So first of all, hey, look, how dumb could they be? They still sold the company for $2.4 billion. That's more than I did. So power to them and power to Google's lawyers for structuring it this way. However, here's what I think. They got someone to take the job of leading the, Nuco, the next version of Windsurf, or maybe it's still called Windsurf, right? Lead Windsurf going forward. They're sitting on a ton of cash out of this licensing deal. We are not privy to know, does that money automatically flow through to investors and shareholders? There is a certain amount set aside for the continuing operations of Windsurf. Is there other IP they're working on that's not part of this licensing deal? Maybe something else regarding AI, right? That's not regarding code. Maybe they feel, look, the CEO and the founder and those guys, we've seen this before. They take their money, they ride off into the sunset. They go off to Google. But the team that's there, Mitchell and I had this, right? Mitchell was a founder of a company called Lattice Networks that was developing a way to manage decentralized, distributed applications back in 1999, 2000 maybe. And they brought in a CEO, and a mutual friend of ours was the chairman, and it crapped away a lot of money, had nothing. That IP went away. But there was another project they were working on to help secure those distributed networks, which became the cornerstone of Still Secure, company Mitchell, I, and our friend Raj Bhargava co-founded.
It was a Perl script that became.
It was a Perl. It was. Truth be told, it was a Perl script that we built into a product. But left turn, 90-degree angle. No one ever knew Lattice Networks, though that was still our corporate name. We were Still Secure, and off we went. You could have something very similar here, right? Where Windsurf becomes known for windsurfing, or I don't know what they're going to become known for, but maybe not what they've licensed here. So unless we have all that detail, right, into who's getting that money, what else is at Windsurf, I think we're just speculating here.
Well, what we don't know, Alan, I think one of the key ingredients here is we say licensing deal. Licensing deal can mean 1,000 things.
Sure.
It can be.
Is it exclusive?
Here you go. Here's the code base. You can, for the following thing, you can do the following things with it. You can resell it. Could be as simple as that. I doubt
does Windsurf get to keep any improvements that Google makes to it?
Exactly. There could be all kinds of strings attached or limitations, but I'm guessing not. Because Google can pay that much money, they're going to be able to use this for some important stuff.
Probably any way they want, but I
imagine.
I think this is one that bears watching. Let's see, because sometimes the
It is
fox
non-exclusive, though. By the way,
it is
non-exclusive.
It's non-exclusive. There you go. There you go.
So now they become an OEM manufacturer.
Could be. That's a model. The only problem is they got to keep it cutting edge, right? And how much of that $2.4 billion goes into Windsurf's coffers versus flowing right out to the investors, right? They probably didn't raise very much money. You give the investor a quick 3x return, and they keep their share of Windsurf, so they have another pot of gold at the end of the next rainbow to chase. Who knows?
Tell you what, I think it's a brilliant move on Google's part because they needed a Windsurf.
Needed the code stuff.
They don't have it.
And with all the, excuse my language, but with all the shit they're in around antitrust, in both here in the U.S. and in the EU, doing this deal that keeps it out of that theater, someone there, that was a smart cookie move right there. Anyway, all right, good for Google, good for Windsurf. We'll be watching it. Let's take a quick break here. And we'll come back and talk about modernizing IT. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.